Okay, we are now recording. Go ahead and introduce your team and tell us a little bit more about Snowfall and how you guys are pulling this all off.
Brian, I'm actually going to start.
Going to introduce this and then go ahead, Brent.
Yeah, I'm going to actually start and just kind of introduce it, and then Todd will do most of the presentation. So I'm Brent Barnett. I'm the CEO of Snowfall Press. Todd is the founder and the chief technology officer of Snowfall. And then we also have Don Olson, who's with our company, is on the call as well. He handles a lot of customer service and other aspects for us. So give you a little bit about who we are and backgrounds and what Snowfall Press does, and then Todd will get more into the technology and everything there. Todd has a master's in industrial engineering from the University of Oklahoma. He started Snowfall Press in 2007 after starting a predecessor in 2000. Prior to that, he worked for Sabre and did a lot of creating logistics solutions for American Airlines, who owned Sabre. I think his main project there was running the inbound logistics for Toyota's Kentucky, their first plant, US-based plant in Kentucky, and then other companies like Roadway Express. So he's got the background in industrial engineering. I have an engineering bachelor's degree, and then I have an MBA from the University of Texas at Austin. And I'm kind of a different background. I'm a chartered financial analyst and spent about 16 years in the investment business before I joined Snowfall Press in 2009. So we actually met in college and have remained friends all these years, and working with each other. So as I mentioned, Snowfall Press started in 2007. It's kind of got an interesting background where it started. It started as a project to print minority language Bibles in the United States for people groups who had emigrated to the US but didn't have a Bible in their native language. So Todd's brother worked for a Bible translation organization in Europe and Africa, and that's kind of where the problem came up that he started to solve, which was you couldn't, for some of these minority languages that are spoken around the world, you couldn't find a Bible in the United States in that language. It'd have to be shipped from somewhere around the world. So it's like, why can't we print those here? Well, turns out printing Bibles is extremely on demand, is tough. Thin paper and all sorts of typesetting rules and everything else. But so that's the genesis of where the company started. But we've also printed commercially for all sorts of customers since the beginning. We offer just kind of a brief flavor for what we do. We offer print on demand solutions for authors, publishers, educational and commercial customers. You know, Brian, you fit right into that group of people that we're trying to reach. We print orders as few as one book up to thousands of copies of a book to give you kind of a flavor for what's happened in 2020. And it's been typical for us. 92% of our orders are for 20 books or less. So we really do specialize in smaller orders. And the reason we could do this is because of our technology that Todd's going to talk about. You know, our technology allows us to print a single copy of a book profitably. And, you know, we're well suited to offer print and fulfill services to customers. That's kind of been where we've really focused on in 2020 with COVID. And, you know, we use a web-based system that allows customers full control from the ordering process. And then our technology takes the files that a customer uploads in PDFs and removes, kind of automates the pre-press process and a lot of things that are involved in book printing that are behind the scenes, but have typically involved a lot of labor. So that's a bit of a flavor for what we do and who we are. And I'm going to turn it over to Todd and let him talk more about the technology, because that's what we want to focus on tonight.
Okay, well, thanks, Brent and Brian. Very kind words, Brian. So this is a table of contents. I guess I feel come the publishing world. It's not a overview. It's a table of contents. So introduction, then talk about the basics of Snowfall Press, talk about how things work, and then some recent variations of things we've done, and then questions and answers. So there's not many slides, and the ones that are there will go pretty quick. So I'm not going to jump into particular, what platforms we're running on. You can always ask me questions, and I'll be happy to talk. I mean, I love to talk technology and what languages we program in and why we chose that and whatever. But this is going to kind of talk about other stuff, but we get to all that in question and answer. So on to the basics of Snowfall Press. So the basics are, one, we automate everything. So, and we basically don't do it if it can't be automated. And at least that's my sort of philosophy. And then a second big thing is standardize, but with options. Now, we don't standardize just for the sake of standardizing. So a good example is we only run 3 kinds of paper, but we'll do any different trim size because we were able to figure out how to not care about the trim sizes, but the paper matters. So we standardize where we need to, and where we don't need to, we can do whatever we need to. Another big one is to remove human steps. Now, that might seem like we're trying to put people out of a job, but we actually put more people in a job by doing more work for people. But by doing that, you improve your quality, improve your consistency. We can also do it at multiple facilities the same way, but and then of course you reduce cost. But it's not just because of human labor. You reduce cost because you don't make mistakes and it doesn't take as long. So the other big thing, which is sort of the mantra that started us to start with, was print to order books. So we don't make a book until you order it. And I'm going to talk about the exception to that here in a minute. But we do it with different paper sizes, different thicknesses of books, different trim sizes, all on a single line. Now you say, why is that a big deal? The single line is actually a big deal because a lot of the guys that you mentioned earlier, there are large printers of books. They have a separate line for each different thing, like the same thickness, same paper, same trim size. We've got a whole giant press doing that. I'm not sure what they're doing today, but there certainly was times when that was what they were doing. They're all the same. We try to do pretty much everything on the same line and put it through, which of course reduces our cost and allows us to be more nimble. And then another sort of basic or philosophy is integrate with external processes. And so what that does is you can get rid of the risk for the external party and reduce costs at the same time. So anywhere you have a touch point with somebody outside, whether it be our customer with an e-commerce platform, where we can just reach out and push, they can add a book to our system and the book shows up in their e-commerce platform like Shopify or WooCommerce. And then when they get an order, then zoop, in comes, we get the order automatically, and then we can update the shipping the other direction. But similarly, we can go into a printer, and with this pandemic, we're now printing 3 different printers, added 2 inkjets, and we're binding at 4 facilities. There's a lot of different pieces. So the more you can get into those guys' operation, you can eliminate cost and eliminate their risk in doing whatever they're doing for you. So those are sort of basic philosophies that we sort of operate everything we operate around. So how do things at Snowfall work? Well, I've got 3 different colors up here, so it's kind of going to follow that. The bottom line is for us to make a book, we have to have a PDF, one for the cover, one for the interior, and we got to know how many you want and where you want us to send it to. And we also have to know kind of where on the page your book, your stuff that we're supposed to print is, so settings. So once we've got that, then we can go into this blue part in the middle, which is pre-press. And you would think a PDF is a PDF. It can go print on one of these big fancy printers, which is not true at all. You have to do all kinds of crazy things, which I would never have imagined were necessary, but they are, to make things print out nicely in a book. And there's a ton of software that happens in sort of this grinding back room thing. Brian made it sound so beautiful and simple because he sees the orange part there. But there's a lot of magic that has to happen in the back end. There's all sort of a software thing. Then once we've got it all figured out where it's going to go, how it's going to get made, then we have to actually make it get done. And so let me jump into the first part, the order taking. A lot of most of our users see a user interface where you come in and you set up your book and you position it, and it's all you, and you can be up and uploaded and done in 5 minutes and then place an order. So the first part is you've got to set up a book. Then once we have a book, then you can tell us how many you would like. And a lot of people just do that with our browser interface, which, by the way, there's a whole new generation coming out. But you mentioned that we have this old version that's been running for years. Well, there's a new version, but we've been busy this summer and didn't release it. So anyway, so we don't want you to be guinea pigs. So that's one alternative. So other alternative is you can order via the API. Now that could mean that your e-commerce platform is connected to the API and just communicates back and forth, or you can actually be a programmer and directly make API calls to our system, or you can actually upload a CSV file with a whole bunch of rows in it, one row for each book or one row for each order, and we gobble that up, and then you end up, with hundreds of orders out of a single CSV file. You just upload it. Or you can actually give us make an API call with just a couple of URLs, or actually you can embed the PDFs with all the settings, everything we got to know. Here's the PDFs, how many do you want, and where do we send it to? So those are all different ways, and I've really brushed over a lot of the different options that there are, but that's a pretty good overview. So now off to the process management and the pre-press. So basically, we've talked about this. We've got to prepare the file for printing, and we prepare it for the particular target that it's going to print on. The way that the file gets set up is different depending on what print engine it's going to go on. If you want to talk about that, we could have like hours-long conversation on the nastiness of that. But then the second part is we automatically plan the process that the order is going to take to get printed and come out the other end. Then this sort of bleeds into the next part. We manage all the steps as it's actually getting made. So on to production. In general, to make a book, you have a cover, we print the cover, and then we laminate it, and we print the inside, and then those two come together and they get bound and then trimmed and then packed and then shipped. Now, to make print to order cost effective, we have all this tied up in one long line of hardware that we sort of hack together, and it's been running, I don't know, 12 years now. Our first line is still running. That cobbles all those things together, and it just goes straight from one to the other. You can change paper types. You can change the size of the trim. There's all kinds of things that can change book after book that go through the line. Anyway, finally the book comes out the end. After it's trimmed, it gets packed into a box. Humans do that because I still haven't found cost effectiveness for automated packing. And then you just scan the label and it prints out a shipping label. You put that on the box and off it goes. So an alternative to this, which is a recent thing, and I have a dozen probably of these different charts of different ways things work, but so as to not bore you, we actually and this is how we got a lot of scalability, because we're printing about 20 times the orders or the books that we typically do, well, orders and books, in the last 3 months than we normally would, literally 20 times. How were we able to do that? Well, we were able to scale by technology. The orders still come in the same way. The servers are not bound in capacity, but our print capacity is bound. So we had already done research and done connections and worked with different printers where we can send the orders off to different places, different binderies, and pull the orders back together and still meet demand. So when I say production is distributed, so we can print the covers, still laminate them, print the bodies yet at a different location, transport them both to a bindery, get them bound, get them trimmed, packed, and then off to ship. So there is the basics of Snowfall. Now I've got 3 variations that we've done in the last, since the pandemic. So I thought that would be interesting. That's an interesting milestone. I've got a number of different things that we've done over the years, and we kind of have a lot of technology that's ready to go. And then whenever the opportunity presents itself, we're ready to jump into it. But these are things that Well, let me just jump into it. So one, normally we take a PDF when that's ready to print. But in this case, we looked and said, what if we were able to make an interface that provided an editor that gave a 90% good design and for a cover and for an interior? That's not as good as what Brian would do, right? I mean, for sure. But if you have a book that you need that's kind of got a short lifespan, which is my third point, then it kind of makes sense. So basically, you can come in here and eliminate, again, our mantra of eliminate cost and manual and automate everything. So if we can automate the process of making a PDF for the cover and the body, and then you click the button and out it comes the other end, boom, you're done. Now, the other thing is, this actually is a great opportunity for designers to come in and create templates and then push through, and then people can just use their templates. And then they just charge for the template. But now this is one, and it's always good to talk about your successes and failures. The technology is a success, but we thought we would roll this out to churches and pastors in particular when the whole pandemic hit, that they would, they're not meeting in person, that they would want to make a book that would go out to their church and, communicate. Well, we found it's very hard to sell to pastors of churches when you can't go see them in person. So even though we're about to ship 750 books, after we get off this call, I'm going to look at a cover and off will go 750 books to a particular congregation. And so people are using it, but this is one variation. But this is us connecting technology on the front end of our standardized mechanism for making books. So scenario number 2 is we created a web front end for gathering parameters for making bilingual Bibles. It's actually the typesetting of bilingual Bibles. And there's strange things like all the digital text for a Bible never has the word table of contents. It never has the word page, like for page number. So you can't actually make a Bible and print one with the information. You have all the words in it, but you don't have those key things. So you got to have those things. You got to know what kind of fonts work. And we made a whole system to do that. And then a back end picks it up, chews on it for an hour or more. Then it makes a PDF that we can print. And then it gets sold through our standard e-commerce mechanism that's connected already. So recent variation number 3 is micro inventory. And so the first 2 were a lot of work we put in. And I can't say we've had a great deal of fruit out of those 2. Now, this third one is one where I mentioned earlier that we have a lot of technologies that we put together that kind of feed in. And so our database structure and our data modeling has had the opportunity for inventory, or what I call micro inventory, for years and years. And with this particular client of ours, for the last 5 years, they've been printing with us. And the last year, they really kicked up their volume. And as a result of that, we're like, we're going to think about their demand would surge. So they would, all in a week, they need like tons and tons of books, which is more than we can print to order, but they wanted to meet the demand. So we modeled their inventory, or their demand process, with time series analysis and some forecasting, and made, figured out trigger points as to how this was going to work. And then we said, well, let's put in inventory, not everything you're going to need, but a lot, so that whenever all these orders come flooding in, we can kind of see what's happening, and then put more in inventory and just kind of keep that piling on top of each other until you get closer to the end of what was the season. And then it kind of winds itself down, and then you're just back to print to order. So anyway, we've been doing that, and Brent is sitting in the fulfillment warehouse that we have, 7,000 square feet. I mean, you might laugh. Well, this became insane, as you can imagine, with these guys do on school at home online, and these are the workbooks for those students. So first of all, you can imagine how unpredictable the demand has been, as it has been every year, but this year was even more interesting. And then there are just a lot of books that were needed, a lot of books, like so many, like 20 times more than was projected.
I'll cut in here, Todd. they use 24 different titles, so it's not just in the real challenge is printing and fulfilling with various combinations of the 24 different titles. And so this model really got tested because, you know, they told us it might be 2 or 3 times last year going in July, and then in late July they called us and said in a panic and said, no, it's going to be 10 or 15 times last year. And we're already receiving orders and it's too late to get, you know, so we had to put all this in place and go really, you know, put the pedal to the metal and go really fast with it, because it was, they called us and said, hey, we have way more than we think and we're already getting orders and we need to fulfill them yesterday. Now go. So it's been a challenge, but good.
The thing that we did though also was, it's kind of what we do. We kind of always have contingencies. And I'd already gone to actually to California in May, which I know that was, I was afraid I was going to not get into California, but I did, because we're printers, right? We're printing for school, so they let us in. So we had a partner that we'd already been talking to when we printed some stuff with, and just in anticipation that we might need them. And we've added more printers since then, but we also kind of got to the point where this was really big. And so Brent and I, one of the two of us, or both of us, have been in Phoenix operating a warehouse since August. And that's, I don't know, kind of what we do. We have a problem, customer needs it done, and so we find a way to get it done, and then here we are. That's our home until February, I think. So anyway, and I'm going on Wednesday. So it's not only Brent sitting there in Phoenix forever, although he has done more than his share. So, but anyway, so we have these different technologies and we kind of wake them up and they work in a different way. And in this case, we actually brought in a user interface for our customer to give to their customers to track and see their shipments, as well as to order. Although the predominance of the orders is still being done by our customer. Anyway, so there's variation number 3 on what I call micro inventory. And that is the last slide. So he was just holding up the 5 minutes. So Q&A. So there we go.
Well done, Todd. Thank you. Let me, I don't need to share my screen, but I can't see everybody's, because I made him co-host, but if you've got, okay, now I can see. So yeah, you guys can unmute yourself and ask some questions. Jan.
Yeah, do you have a photograph of some of your books so I could see them?
A photograph of some of the books. Yeah.
I'm having trouble visualizing what they look like.
Well, so here's one. I've got an office full of them.
There we go.
They do, I was going to mention, they're one of the few companies that can do spiral bound print on demand. So my ukulele books that I do, which are, it doesn't work well if you're trying to teach, to basically use a workbook. So I have these 8.5 by 11 workbooks that they print for me.
Oh, okay.
And they're coil bound, and there's very few companies out there that can do coil bound one at a time. Usually if you want coil bound, you would have to buy lots of books, or you have to go somewhere like Lulu and you have to wait a month for it. So
like for the ukulele book, how much did that cost you?
Oh, it's shockingly inexpensive. I think I usually spend less than about $3-4 a book. That's
Wow.
fully bound. Yeah, it's about half of what you typically would print. You would pay.
Brian, how many pages is that book?
Well, I don't know exactly, but let's say 100.
Okay, so
Actually, no, that one is 200. Sorry, Brent, 200.
yeah, so yeah, it's a typical, Jan, for a typical 200-page 6x9 regular, what we call, it's a perfect bound book. It's your typical paperback book that you would find in a store that Todd is showing there. You're going to pay $3.50 for a copy.
Wow, that is
Yeah, a rule of thumb is
reasonable.
like 2 cents a page, right, Brent?
Yeah, not, well, it depends. If it's a
Done up.
larger size, typically when you're printing, there's a kind of a break point. In ours, it's at above 6 by 9. So 8.5 by 11 is going to cost you more per page, double what a 6 by 9 would be.
Oh,
So,
okay.
and that's not untypical because of the way printing works. But a 6 by 9 is going to be about $3.50. It's about a penny, 1.1 cent a page, and kind of a dollar, what we say with $1.40 for the cover. So, you can
Well,
do.
and no setup fee. That's a huge benefit too. The fact that you can have as many versions of your book as you want, and you upload a new file, and there's no setup cost. And I mean that is a huge savings when you consider Ingram Spark charges $49 to set up a title. And so you would, if every time you have to do a revision, you have to upload a new file, it very quickly becomes unattractive. But Snowfall makes it effortless. If I have to change one word, I can just.
So for an 8.5 by 11, how much would that be per copy?
They have a pricing
approximately?
calculator on their website, Jan.
Yeah,
we should check that out.
Okay.
I'd be happy to, we can give you, be happy to chat with you offline and give you pricing for something like that. What's a little bit unique about us is our philosophy is some printers will offer volume discounts for very large quantities.
Right.
And because of our automation and the way we do things, we can offer cheaper prices for smaller quantities. The flip side of that coin is we don't get the cost savings that they get for very large quantities. The benefit we think for customers is you print what you need, you're not trying to hit a target to get a cheaper price. This is not Costco printing where you say, okay, I need 3 rolls of toilet paper, but I get really cheap if I buy it 60 at a time. It may take me 6 months to do it. And our philosophy is print what you need, try it out. And yeah, you may think you're going to sell 1,000 books or need 1,000 books, but Brian can tell you this, not to throw water on somebody's parade, but authors are quite optimistic many times. And you will find many authors that ask them to see their garage, and you realize what their garage is. There's a reason their car is parked in the driveway.
Well, and I would say too, Brent, a big part of it is that being able to ship one book at a time to one address. So the distribution, the problem is if you buy a whole bunch of books, you actually have a book distribution nightmare because you have to get those books to readers. And
Sure.
Unless you have a warehouse like Amazon, unless you're in the business of book distributing, you are going to really start to hate getting involved in it. So when I basically get an order to fulfill, or I want to send a book to review, I go on to Snowfall, I order one book and I have it shipped to that person. And typically within a week, they get their book. So I never step foot in a post office. And
Well, it's even better than that, Brian, though.
Offer media mail. Sorry, Bob.
Well, first off, I use the service as well. And first off, the quality is phenomenal for one-up printing. I mean, I just can't say too much about that, but the whole distribution process of you send it through to the order, you get a confirmation of it when it goes into production, you get a confirmation when it ships, you get a tracking number where it goes to, you can tie that out. We tie that out into our contact management system to make our follow-up calls from and all of that type of stuff. I mean, I have been just nothing but impressed with the operation. I mean, just hands down an excellent distribution system, whoever built it.
Todd, you did, right?
I did.
Take a bow, Todd.
An interesting comment is that we didn't start out thinking we would ever build a user interface for people to log in and upload books. Probably stupidly, I was thinking, well, surely someone will just build software that will order from our central engine of making books. And they didn't. So we built an interface, but our hope was that people would just use, API calls, and other people would start businesses and find a way to order from us. So that's just a side comment. But
I'd love to ask you a little bit about how you handle customer service, because that's not typically something that you lead with, and it's because you don't staff. I mean, the people who work with you know how to use your system. I mean, Bob figured it out. Maybe I can say we're a little more technical than maybe the first time author, but you don't really have a system. And I'm just curious what you've done. I mean, I wouldn't say that the systems that the other companies have are really any better right now because they're overwhelmed with demand. So for example, every time you go to Ingram Spark and you click chat, it says offline, right? You're lucky if you can actually get in the queue and talk to a human being. And if you send an email, somehow it's acceptable that a week later you get a response. And to me, that a company can basically say in a week, you'll get a response to your email and it has to do with something that's urgent is just crazy. So what is your guys' philosophy on customer service and what are the challenges maybe you've overcome?
I can say, first of all, that Don Olson, who's been quiet so far, is a rock star. He doesn't get into the glory and all this stuff, but he and Brent are the ones that do almost all of the customer service. I don't know, I think they're awesome, but you can answer the question now. So
I think the challenge, customer service is always a challenge because if you end up having to employ too many people in that, you can't make money. It's that challenge of you need to automate, but there's going to be enough people that struggle with it. So there's always this balance between trying to make your system user friendly. You recognize if you make it so user friendly, you get all sorts of people that really don't know what they're doing. I was commenting to somebody that, you get contacted by people that say, I don't really know how to use computers. And you're like, this is a problem because we're totally web-based and totally computer-based. So in some ways, we like to work with people like you, Brian, and others that when somebody calls us and says, well, I've put together a Word document and I want to make it into a book. How do I do that? We're pretty quick to say we're not the place for that. If you're going to use us, you need to come with print ready files. So here are some other folks to contact to do that because we call ourselves Snowfall Press. We're not publishers, we're printers. So you really have to be kind to people. And at the same time, there's somewhere there's a balance between user-friendly, but not so user-friendly that everybody feels like they need to call and ask you questions about, what should my cover look like? You're like, no, that's not a question. You need to go find a graphic designer, use that, or my file's not working. How did you make it? Well, I made it in Word and I exported to a PDF from Word. Well, that works about half the time, and the other half it's a disaster, and we're not going to solve it for you. So here's some tools. So we've developed a system to try to solve a lot of problems on the front end, and then you have to be clear to people that we're not going to hold your hand to the process because you can't afford it.
well, we do say, again, we're charging you, okay, $3.25 to make the book and then, shipping and packing. But if you order a book and you like it, then order another one. If you don't, then change it and then order it until you get one that you like. And at $3.25, you can do that a few times without really hurting yourself. It can be frustrating because you have to wait a few days to get it back, but you can also look online and see what it's going to look like for the most part before you get it. So I don't know. And there is something to be said. What a book looks like on the screen and what a book looks like in your hand are two different things. I mean, you just have to, the feel of the margin, the space between the words and the spine. There's just no substitute for actually having a book in your hand.
My regret is not printing every single book I've ever done, because I've probably set up hundreds of books with you guys, but most of the time I just ship them right to the author and I never actually see them. But something about on the screen and then seeing a book in print, there's like, you don't realize you didn't leave enough white space. It just has a feel that you can't see on the screen. Or what I'm learning now is that 6:9 is great, but 5.5 by 8.5 is even better. Like there's just a feel to it. Or the matte covers. A customer complains that there was an issue with the matte cover. I ordered one and I said, these are great. So I don't know what you're talking about or what you're comparing it to, but I agree with you. You want to go ahead and print it. Also, Karen did ask the question about an ISBN. I think actually that's probably one of the best things about Snowfall Press is you don't need an ISBN. You upload a PDF file. Whether or not that book has an ISBN doesn't matter. They will print it and they will ship it to you. So the other companies all require an ISBN that creates this immediate barrier to entry, because then all of a sudden people are like, oh no, what am I supposed to do? And there's pitfalls when you take an ISBN number from KDP, for example, or you want to go to Bowker and now you have to pay $125 to get a single ISBN. But you want to just get a printed book because your book probably has a lot of work to go, right? You need to see a physical proof because you can't see things on the screen. So I think that's a huge bonus that you guys don't require an ISBN.
Mhm.
So may I ask you a question? If I'm ready, I'm almost ready. I have a cookbook I'm writing. So the person who's working with me was going to upload it to KDP, order a couple proof copies. Are you saying that I could use you for that instead of them? I guess I'm not sure how. I want to sell the book through Ingram Sparks and Amazon. But how does your company then, I mean, I like everything I'm hearing. How would you fit in with all of that picture?
Well, here's how I answer that question, because people ask it, when people ask, well, who do you compete with? And you say, oh, well, we compete with Amazon. Oh, that's a winning strategy. And Lightning Source. That's a great way to make lots of money, is compete with Amazon. But here's what I tell people for when they ask, well, why would I use you versus KDP or Lightning Source? Well, KDP serves Amazon, okay? And Brian can tell you this, when authors use Amazon, a lot of times they'll come back to us and say, I sold a lot of copies and I didn't make much money. And you're like, yeah, Jeff Bezos is smart. He figures out how to everybody else to develop the content, and then he makes the money off of it. I mean, they have a tremendous tool. So I'm not saying we tell people, if you want to sell on Amazon, having your book at KDP is a wise thing, because nobody can serve Amazon like KDP. At the same time, there's some advantage to having your book at other places like Snowfall Press. You have another option that if you're not selling solely through Amazon, or you're not going straight through distribution like you want to with Ingram, who owns Lightning Source, there's some advantages. So there's no harm in having your book at 2 or 3 different places, and utilizing what makes the most sense for you. I mean,
I'd say for me, it's always been about speed, Brent. So like right now, Ingram Spark is really overwhelmed with business. So I've been waiting a week for a book to be approved. It's still going through the pre-publication process. So we submitted the files a week ago. If I had uploaded the book to Snowfall Press, I would have hit printed the same day I uploaded, and I would have had a book by now. So while we're still waiting for Ingram Spark to even approve the files we've sent up, you guys would have basically shipped me a book. So Linda, I think they're just, for the impatient people out there, they're a really good solution. And for a cookbook, if you want spiral bound, you're not going to be able to get that from those other companies because they don't offer it. So if you ever wanted to offer, I encourage my clients to offer every possible format: paperback, hardcover, and spiral bound, depending on the book. Okay. And you could do like a large print edition and not need a new ISBN number. I mean, you could do all sorts of crazy things. You could customize the book for one particular company or organization or special giveaways or something. You can just do a lot of creative things when you're not kind of held hostage by a single ISBN that's tied to a single title, to a single cover. And once you've got that all set up, you can't make any changes. You have to now publish a new ISBN number if you change the cover or the title, and that creates all sorts of distribution nightmares. So anyway, did that answer your question, Linda?
No, because I don't think I asked it properly, because I'm new to all this. So I'm confused. I'm pretty confused about everything. But if I order through Snowball, that you don't have a sales portal where people can go on and buy my book through your company. Is that correct?
right. No, we don't.
but the benefit is I can buy author copies that I go around to bookstores or places to sell.
Or sell off your own website. That's what I
Yeah.
do.
Okay, through my own website. Okay, so it's not that it has to be either or. It can be all three places.
Absolutely.
And I could use your company to get my proof copies and my author copies, because honestly, I just as soon not deal with Amazon any more than I have to, but I do feel like I want my book there so people, it's easy
Oh
for them.
yeah, you definitely need to have it there because there are a lot of people who are going to go to Amazon and
Right.
they handle fulfillment and they ship overnight. You know, prime shipping is key. The nice thing
Yeah.
is if you need copies like immediately, I still occasionally will have authors buy books directly from Amazon just because if they want to get it overnight and they have an Amazon Prime account, they can pull that off pretty amazingly. So
I don't know enough about Amazon's model, but couldn't you print them at Snowfall, drop ship them to Amazon and fulfill them out from there?
We do that. Man, every week we ship books to Amazon. So, I mean, it's just, you know, you put your book with Amazon Advantage. Brian, am I saying that right?
it's seller, yeah, I think it's Seller Central now. And it's really if you're doing enough volume. So you have to be selling really like a book a day at least to make that cost effective to do so. Otherwise, the KDP is the print on demand. But yes, there are a lot of people who ship boxes of books to Amazon. But keep in mind, there's a 55% markup that Amazon keeps on books that you sell through Author Central or Author Advantage or Seller Central. And it very quickly becomes not very good way to make money unless, again, you're selling 30 to 50 to 60 or 100 books a month. And I do know I have clients that are selling hundreds of books and they are using Seller Central, but otherwise you're better off doing the print on demand financially. Good question.
Financially, it's always been disadvantageous for the author to write a book. I mean, forever. Because it's always been, I mean, we were in a distribution warehouse as a printer for a number of years. But the bottom line is, at the best case, as a publisher, you're getting, 35, 40% of the retail price of the book. And you have to pay for the making of the book out of that. And then the rest of it comes to your profit, which is not very much. And so as an author, if you go with a publisher, big publisher, where they're getting 10, 12% of the sales price of the book. So, in general, authors aren't getting a very good deal in the whole book business, even if they're a big name author selling thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of copies. They're still not getting more than 10 to 12%, maybe 15% in a very aggressive case of the book price. So, I don't know, Don, he always brings this up because he deals with a lot of groups that have, they'll have 15, 10, 20 different books they sell a lot of. Those guys, if you bring your own market, then if you sell from your own website, if your people are buying your book because they know you and you can just send them to your own website, well, then if you have enough volume, it makes sense to directly connect to us and off you go. If you don't have the volume, it doesn't make sense. So it's not one of the immediate options on our website to connect up and do e-commerce, but it is a thing.
Just to jump in here as a random audience member, I think as an aspiring first-time author, like many of us are that are a part of this meetup tonight, I think it pays dividends to work with people like Brian, just because he has the experience bringing books to market and he understands kind of the audience you're trying to hit. Are you trying to build a following? And Brian can kind of work with you on that front.
Thanks, Jim. Yeah, it's the barriers are very low to entry. And I think that it's a great way to build expertise and credibility. I mean, Bob's using it for a great marketing because when you can send someone a book as opposed to a brochure, I mean, you build a lot more credibility and it kind of gives you the opportunity. If you've been doing something for a long time, you should write it down. I mean, I'm saying that it's easier said than done because I should have a book about how to do all this stuff, but it changes constantly. It's what I've just realized is that it's it changes so frequently. And I used to say that we're in a hyper state of change just because the rules keep changing and Amazon keeps changing and the distribution and the opportunities. So anyway.
I have a technology question. My first question is what technology is putting the letters on the page? I'm guessing it's not laser printer. And my second question is, you mentioned custom hardware that you guys had developed to help this process out. And I'm interested in hearing about that, but in a more general sense, what did you feel needed custom hardware instead of off-the-shelf hardware, and how were you able to do that and still, it sounds like, use outside printers and binders and get it done the way you want it done?
Well, let me see, there's a few questions there.
Yeah.
So, first off, we do use toner-based, and more recently we've added, because they go 417 feet a minute, printing books out, some inkjet printers, 2 of them. It's incredible. And I think inkjet is where the future is going to. And if inkjet's had a bad name for a number of years, but I will tell you that we took books that we printed on a toner-based machine and we put them next to one we printed on an inkjet, and we struggled to know which one was which. Now, I can tell the difference because I know, partly because I know which file was going to look which way, not because I could tell which one was toner, which one was inkjet. But so first off, we use, if you order right now, you're going to get a book made in a toner-based machine. And with the machines we use actually have perfect registration because we print both sides at the same time. Now, to answer the question on why did we put hardware together, part of it is that I kept going to print shows and I would ask a question about, well, you break down the process, right? You got to print the book. Okay, so it comes out on, let's call it most of the cost effective. I have spreadsheets that analyze the different sizes of sheets and pieces of equipment. And there are machines out there that will do, you can buy for $500,000 that will just bind. That's all they do. Or they'll just move the book around. Well, that's not very cost effective if you want to do it very frequently. So we said, well, where's we kind of found the intermediate points. But so fundamentally, if you get a sheet that's 12.5 by 19-inch sheet, which is what you need to print on to be cost effective for a toner-based machine. So that means that if you have a 6 by 9 book, you're going to get 8 pages out of that one sheet after you fold it up or cut it up. So then you got to send it to a folder first to fold it one way, and then you need to rotate it around because that's the way folders work. So we had to rotate it, and then you want to fold it again, and then you want to gather up all those pieces, and then in a clamp, and don't let them go crazy. So you have to like grab them, and then the next sheet comes in and you grab it. Next sheet comes in, you grab it. You can't let it the pages, and then you put that into a binder. So all those things are kind of fundamentally what has to happen to get a book into a binder. So there wasn't something to buy. And so we just went and found hardware that was there and sort of hacked it with the participation of the people who make it, and then wrote software that makes it all work together, sort of an operating system for the print line. And we have partners that we worked with, and it wasn't all us. I mean, there is a company in England that we worked with. There's the binder, the folders come out of Germany. We worked with the engineers there. I don't know, there's just lots of different pieces and stuff we put together to make the line that makes it cost effective to do one book at a time. But if you weren't going to touch it by hand, then, and in this case, it's not about labor. It's about getting it done accurately. Because if you don't do it where you're scanning each sheet and the sheet, matches up with a cover to make sure those are the right one. You don't want to put the wrong cover with the different insides. If you're making just one book at a time, it's real easy to get things messed up. So a human would mess it up. I would mess it up. So that's why we worked with all the different hardware vendors. And so you're trying to find cost effective, and you're solving all these problems back and forth and trying to figure out what you can do without doing the least amount of work, but getting the result that you have to get. And you kind of have to get all think it was 7 different vendors of hardware that we worked with, different companies that all fit together and make one line. So, and more
Right.
recently, I don't know if you're, we've even do a lot. Most of our stuff's running in the Amazon cloud now, which is a little ironic, actually. The fact that Amazon makes books, but yeah, I mean, a lot. We spin up a server for a few seconds, and then we compute something, and then off it goes and does the next thing. So I don't know if I answer your question.
Yeah, I think so. It sounds like at least at one level, you weren't able to find anything that scaled down far enough to your output requirement. I mean, to scale down to one book at a time.
And there is a solution that is I would buy today for a new line. In fact, the guys that made our stuff, it was funny because I was out there, looking at what they put together, and they built our piece. It's like, that looks just like my piece. And like, well, yeah, because we made it. So, and there it is. So yeah, so 12 years later, there are some options that you can buy.
Thanks.
Yeah, I would just say the interesting thing about book publishing, right? I would say since 2015, it's sort of been in decline until this year. At least for me, I've noticed like the demand has really been going down because audiobooks are popular, and just the overall number of people reading books, I think we can probably all assume, has been declining because everybody's on their phones, right? The more times you see phones, the less books you see. But this has been one of those industries with COVID that's kind of had a complete 180-degree turn, where all of a sudden it's hot again. Like, this is where the action is. And I wonder, if it's going to be sustainable, if it's hopefully going to make people realize that books are great, and it's still a good way to get information and unplug. I think that people are a little bbit digitally fatigued. Even, Zoom fatigue is a real thing. So I don't know, what do you think is the future, Todd, as far as, the next 10 years?
Well, I think first of all, for Snowfall, it's very good because people are right now are printing large runs on offset, or they order 5, 10, 20,000 books. Well, those guys are still going to be printing those books, and then that's going to eventually just shrink and shrink and shrink. If it goes that direction, it'll just shrink, but we'll still be here because people will still want real books to see and hold. And I think, frankly, it's convenient to have a real book that you can actually look at and you can mark in it, and I don't have to figure out how to bookmark it. And we do make, like we did this platform I told you about earlier. We made ebooks. You put your copy and paste your stuff in. We made an ebook alongside the ones that we print, right? So
I vaguely remember that. Yeah.
What's that?
I vaguely remember that you talking about that technology you were investing a lot in early in the ebook era, right?
I don't know. We recently rolled it. It works. It's out and going. So, but yeah. So we said, yeah, we got to be able to make an ebook alongside someone printing, helping them get their book to where it's a PDF that they can push out. But in the end, I think that printed books are here for a good little while. And we've printed more books this year than other years. And again, that's a lot of school related stuff. So maybe that's a little bit unfair, but because certainly conference business is off, as well as people who sell in person after having, if you're a speaker and you go when you speak, or like if you had a cooking class and you sold after cooking class, maybe you don't have the cooking class anymore. Maybe you do, I don't know, but it depends on where you are. But there's a lot less of that. And so, yeah.
No, that's a good point. Yeah, I didn't realize there are aspects of book publishing that are struggling for sure. And you got to wonder if companies like Barnes and Noble are going to even make it through all this, right? It seems like they've been on the ropes for years, but they still keep kicking. Sorry, any other questions, you guys? We've gone a little long, but these guys were happy, said they'd be happy to stay after. I know we went into a lot of the book publishing stuff, which wasn't my intent, but we're happy to answer those questions.
So how are you do 4-color? My book is very color intensive with lots of photographs. That work fine on your process?
It does. I would say our cost advantage is in black and white. So I don't know, that's probably a Brent question more, and probably if you talked offline, that's your best bet.
Okay.
Let me do this, Brian. What I can say is, let me give you an email address. It's real simple. It's just info at snowfallpress.com. And just reference to that you're a friend of Brian. You could just, FOB.
Hi, Brian.
Yeah, you're a friend of Brian's. And I'll know, we'll, Don or I will get back with you on any of those questions that you have, because we can, I'd love to personally answer them, or Don can do it as well. And, so there's some ins and outs of color interiors that have some good and bad. We're not, a lot of who you want to print with may depend on what type of book you're trying to get at, produce. And so, we don't make any claim that we're perfect for everyone. But we can, and if we are not the right place for you, cost wise or other things, we'll tell you and try to help you find the right place to print books. So, it's just write that and we'll get back with you, and just reference this, and we'll make sure that we answer your questions.
Okay, thank you. And Brian, do you have an email address you want to share?
Sure, it's brian@selfpublish.org. I'll put not .com, .org, selfpublish.org.
Okay.
But it's yeah, they're not trying to be everything to everyone. I think that they have a really good niche in a lot of ways for semi-experienced book consultants. I would say is the right fit for them. It's a little bit of an intimidating platform the first time you look at it. So I actually made a tutorial I can send you that walks you through how you upload your books. But there's going to be a lot of trial and error, Linda, if you're doing this on your own. And that's where you have to sort of always balance, do I have more time than money? Well, then you can spend hours and hours and hours learning how to do this through trial and error. But sometimes you'll spend up more because you wind up printing a lot of books that you maybe aren't going to be able to use. But at the same time, if you're under the gun and you realize that the lane getting this book out there, then it might make sense to reach out to someone like me.
Well, I will say that looking at books that come through the system, the ones that are done by professionals like a Brian, you have a real advantage in how your book looks. And there's no, I'm just saying they're professionals for a reason. There's amazing things like, how did you make that look so great? So they make these books that just look amazing inside and out. And yeah, so I mean, there's a reason why those books look better, because there's people.
Well, and believe me, the first books that I did were nothing. I would be embarrassed. Even the book that I first published is not even close to reflective of what I do today. So every year, the more you do this, you get better and better. The same with cover designers, anyone in the business. The first time you just don't know what you don't know until you've done it a few times. And I can usually see a cover design come in from a client and I'm like, how many covers has this person done? Because they love it, but they don't look at covers. Unless you look at covers, you've looked at hundreds of covers. You don't understand like little things that's where experience makes such a huge difference. And so when, you are better off out the gates.
Yeah, I mean, I'm working with a professional company that helps self-publishers, but I'm thinking, I don't know if they know about Snowball Press. I'm going to tell them about it.
Snowfall.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, because it seems like a pretty neat option if you ask me. I don't know.
Yeah, they may have their own partners. I think everybody, like I said, I love Snowfall because they work well with small people like, companies like me. I'm pretty much, I'm such a small individual and I don't have the leverage that a big organization that does thousands of titles, although I've sent hundreds of titles to Snowfall and, I've got quite an inventory and there's books even that I have there's a book at Snowfall that you can't get anywhere else. And so for, whatever reason, sometimes an author doesn't want, they're very exclusive with where the books. In fact, one of the books, it's very thin, but it sells for $100 because of the content that's in the book. And he doesn't want that on Amazon or anywhere else. So it's like, there are very specific, niche opportunities of being able to have kind of this amazing printer, a print book for you that is almost like having a printer in your house. So anyway,
That's great.
any other questions, publishing related or not? Well, I want to thank everybody for, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording for this year, because next